WWT presents Partner Spotlight.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Partner Spotlight brought to you by WWT Presents. My name is Clint Huffaker. I'm a practice manager of application and API security at Worldwide Technology. As businesses continue to change the way they deliver services and leverage IT infrastructure, applications are on the move all the time, increasing distributed across the cloud, edge, data center, and very distributed to maximize efficiency. Of course, this inherently heightens the operational complexity and security risk, and AI is adding fuel to the fire. F5 has been part of the equation for years, but like the rest of the business landscape, it too is evolving. Exactly, what we're talking about today is the evolution of F5's Big IP platform and Big IP Next. Before we dive into our conversation, let's get to some introductions. I'm deeply grateful to be joined today by Hitesh Patel, Senior Director of Product Management, Big IP at F5 Networks. Hitesh is based out of Dallas and brings with him well over 20 years of experience in the IT industry. And my colleague, David Homoney, who is a technical solutions architect at WWT. David focuses on application, API, and workload security. He's one-upping Hitesh with over 30 years of experience in the industry, joining us from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Hitesh, David, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we jump into Big IP Next solution, let's level set on the industry landscape. Why is the traditional application delivery infrastructure struggling to meet the evolving demands of modern business? Hitesh, why don't you take a run at that first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Clinton, and hi, everyone. We can frame this a couple of ways, but the one I like to use is, well, what isn't broken? What am I not hearing from customers as I need more of this? And it's really around something that F5 has done very well for a very long time. We continue to do that well, and around scale and performance and just the sheer volume of things that you need to do with an ADC or security solution in the space. What I'm not hearing from customers is I need massive new scale or massive new performance in terms of the raw data plane in their environments. But that really then says, well, what are we looking for in Big IP Next, and what are customers challenged with? And it's really around operations. What we've heard very clearly from customers is that their operational experience, how they operationalize the technology, is becoming a major issue for them. And I look at that in a couple of ways. First, the number of environments that customers are having to deploy in has increased. The average right now across our customer base is 3.4 environments. So you can think about on-prem, some version of one or two public clouds, and then maybe some legacy type environment, right? And then the sheer number of applications that they're having to support. And because of that sprawl, operations has become the real challenge. And so with Big IP Next, what we're doing is bringing forward all of that performance, all of that scale that we had in the data plane, but now going in and reimagining the operational experience, and then getting the performance and scale of the operational experience to where we can deliver to the challenges that our customers have right now.
Very good. David, what are your thoughts on, traditional application delivery infrastructure struggling to meet the modern demands of business?
So I would echo a lot of what Hitesh said as well. The big struggle has been taking and separating the data plane and the control plane together. And that's been a struggle for customers all along. I think in addition to what Hitesh said, automation is greatly changing how people are consuming F5. We at WWT are seeing a lot of our customers not only look at moving to Big IP Next, but at the same time looking to use that time as a way to automate the way they consume the F5 services. So that way that they can shift those services from one area to another without much headache. So I tend to agree with everything that Hitesh said there. That's been a problem in the ADC world now going on 10 years.
Yeah, so Hitesh, that kind of leads me to an article that you wrote that I had looked at on F5 on the website, that I think you had started off with, you either have the right technology or you don't get anywhere, right? And it seems kind of a good introduction to Big IP Next. How do you see, F5's Big IP Next solution addressing these challenges, and what are some of the key benefits?
Yeah, so that article, it's amazing. Sometimes you go back and look and say, did the words stand the test of time? And I guess I'm being put to the test of that today. But really, there's a couple of aspects to that. First of all, from a technology perspective, right? our data plane is rock solid. What we have with the traffic management microkernel, which is really the core of Big IP, that is the thing that is doing all the work on the wire. That technology and that gem that we have, that diamond, is coming with us into Big IP Next. But on top of that, we invented and innovated and have executed on a number of new things. I think the biggest area of that is around our declarative APIs and our approach to automation in general. That was a significant investment and a purposeful strategic decision that we made in the classic Big IP world. All of these things are actually available in the Big IPs that you have now in your environment. But what that allowed us to do is to go and test all of that against some of the largest customers in the world. Today, while most of us go and live our regular lives, you are going through Big IPs that are running our AS3 declarative APIs or our automation toolchain components. That's happening already. And what it did is it gave us the experience and it gave us the confidence to now go and double down on that particular technology and say, as we go into Big IP Next, we're going to do even more of that because we've gained that experience. We know exactly where customers are landing on that. We know where things were a little rough. We know where they were smooth. And now we can extend that through the whole platform. So I think that the words were important back when I initially wrote them, and it was maybe more focused around the core of the platform and the data plane. But as we've evolved the solution, we've always focused on saying, how do we bring technology to bear? How do we solve the problem the right way to meet customers, not just where they are, but where they're going? And I think at this point in time, we're well ahead of the curve when we look at the market, and we're only expanding that lead as we get Big IP Next out the door.
F5 is one of WWT's most strategic partners. So we got our hands on the beta equipment and, to really test Big IP Next very early on. And David, I know you were involved in that. So I'm kind of hoping that you can share some insights into those testing results and what you learned throughout that process.
Yeah, so we like you said, we definitely had it very, very early in the process and saw it for what it was, which was like this completely revolutionary way of looking at the way of doing ADC down at its core. We were excited, especially those of us who have used Big IP for a long time. We're really excited about the disassociation of the control in the data plane, and for a true centralized management platform built from the ground up. We've dealt with a lot of let's say come after the fact management solutions that have fit the needs that customers have, but none of it have been built from the get-go, from the ground up, as the management platform for Big IP and like the sole management platform for Big IP going forward. So that was an awesome change for us. And then the focus on API first, I think, was huge. I think Hitesh mentioned that, but like for us to see that, like there were features that they wanted us to test in beta that we could only actually turn on at first using Postman. Right? Like when they said API first, they weren't kidding. Like it happened there, and then it would get migrated into the GUI. And so we did a lot of functional testing around that to see, okay, what is the experience going to be like for users? We had guys who were testing it from an API perspective. And then there was those of us who decided to also test it in the traditional, let's say, NetOps role, right? The traditional Big IP. What's it like to deal with this from a day-to-day basis through the GUI the way traditional Big IP was? And in both cases, you're talking about a great improvement over what came before. And its scalability, the ability to scale the number of devices that you can centrally manage with it, is also very important as customers' estates continue to grow, right? As customers move away from hardware and more to software, what we're seeing is that their consumption increases. So instead of having one gigantic Big IP to run everything, they're running a bunch of smaller instances of Big IP. And so instead of consolidating, they're actually diversifying because it allows them to do upgrades quicker and a bunch of other factors that meet their business needs. So I think in a lot of respects, Big IP Next is hitting customers kind of where they're trying to get to, and it's ahead of where they are today.
Yeah, so the need is there, right? The solution is addressing the challenges as you just pointed out. But I think at the end of the day, Clients aren't looking for complex transitions, and they certainly aren't looking to, and are certainly looking to avoid downtime, in these critical environments. So to kind of each of you, like, I'd be interested to know, how do you see clients migrating and deploying this new technology, since it is so different than where they've been since, potentially 2004 when Big IP TMOS was first introduced?
Yeah. So, look, one of the things that we're really focused on, in fact, some of the first capabilities that we built was this workflow. And I talked about automation earlier. There's kind of two flavors of that in Big IP Next. There's the raw automation power of the platform, which is if you're a DevOps centric or a shift left type customer, yeah, you can interact with the entire platform without ever touching the GUI. You could do everything via the API. But in that API, and this is the important part, is there are workflows baked into the API. So it's not just, back in the world of like, hey, let me make 4 calls and stitch together what I need to do to take an action. That API is workflow based, and then that is what's exposed in the GUI. Now, one of the first workflows that we worked on in Big IP Next was the migration workflow. We want customers to be able to take their existing config. You put that into Big IP Next Central Manager. You just upload your UCS archive, which is basically a config backup of a Big IP system. And we will do all the work for you, not only to convert the config, but we do a lot of things to clean up. Now, look, I used to operate environments. It's been a while since I've done that now, but I see a lot of real world customer environments. And I got to tell you, it is kind of like looking at it and be like, man, there's some stuff that was swept under the rug here. We all know that that's what we have to do sometimes as humans and as people with limited resources. But one of the best things about the migration tools is it's not just config conversion. We go in and group things. We put things into logical buckets for you. We go and create applications. One perfect example of that is if you're running a HTTPS enabled application, you're usually also creating a port 80 redirect for that application. In Big IP, those were two separate things. They were never really linked together other than in the brain of the operator. And you got to ask yourself, well, how much are people going to be able to keep track of? Because that's demonstrably where we get kind of bad at things. What Next will do is group these things together and put them together in a more logical and easier to sort through topology for you, so that when it comes into Next, you're actually organizing things better, right? So that migration step is really important for us. The other side of it is we've designed this to be what we call a side-by-side migration. We want customers, if it's appropriate for their environment, to migrate one VIP or one application at a time. You don't have to do a full cutover, right? You could go in and say, hey, I'm going to move this one, I'm going to move that one, and slowly transition over into Big IP Next. Now, if you're confident, I have some customers who have looked at me and said, look, this thing looks like it's going to work. It's actually just easier for me to push the button and cut over. That option always existed. But I think these other options that are there allow us to smooth all of these bumps out in what will be a migration, and something that we take good care in making sure that we built the product and the workflows to achieve the outcome, which is we don't want downtime. We don't want apps to be affected. We don't want your customers to be affected. We want you to see everything we're doing. You want to have confidence that before you push the button to deploy, that thing is going to work. And we've built that into Central Manager.
Yeah, no, Hitesh, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, it's, for WWT, we kind of have that motto, how are we driving business outcomes securely, right? And making that consumable from a DevOps, fashion via APIs is great. And David, I know, we talked to a lot of customers about F5 and kind of looking through that. How do you see, from our perspective, the conversations you have and the challenges, around that, how do you see clients migrating and deploying into Big IP Next?
So I would say a lot of customers are going to do exactly like Hitesh said, and I think that's a really valid way of doing it. The second way you're going to see is, he alluded to the more, let's say, shift left or DevSecOps oriented customers. Those guys are already using AS3, and the beauty is there's backwards compatibility, right? So the shift becomes a lot easier to move that customer from Big IP traditional or classic Big IP over to Next. They already have a lot of that work done. So there's a lot of opportunity right there for our more advanced customers to be able to shift those workloads over to Big IP Next fairly easily. Secondarily, there's the ability to use the Journeys tool as well, which has been out and it's pretty well tried and tested now with both, I think, internal F5 professional services, and then our own people have used it to actually help migrate customers over. And then finally, for the customers who maybe are extremely advanced and they have all these capabilities, but they don't always have people. Like we have the ability at WWT to help staff aug that. We've already are helping customers migrate onto F5's new hardware platforms and working to help them plan and migrate over to Big IP Next currently. So yeah, there's a lot of options and flexibility in how customers move over, and it depends upon how they want to consume those services.
So it's you can't deny it. Big IP Next is the next generation of Big IP software from F5. So, Hitesh, I think it'd be best for you to go first, but I'm kind of curious, to get a glimpse into the roadmap of what we can expect over the next 6, 12, 18 months as we see customers transitioning from Aguro TMOS over to Next in that. So if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of some roadmap and journey that we have coming at us from F5.
Yeah, sure. So let's quickly just cover kind of what we've got out there now, right? We've shipped support for LTM, our local traffic manager, which is the core ADC product. We've got support out for WAF already, and a good amount of coverage. Like, when we look at these things, we try to hit in the initial release between 70 and 80% of the functionality we know that customers use. And so WAF and the policy elements that are really important in WAF, a good portion of that is out the door. We've also shipped the DNS global server load balancing use case. I'm really proud of that one. That's, I think, where you're really starting to see us achieve kind of what I call orbital velocity. Getting LTM and WAF out the door, we're kind of like, hey, we've launched the thing. But now when we add a DNS to that, you can add GSLB to any application service in Big IP Next in less than 5 clicks. Like, give me a GR cluster, a global resiliency cluster. That's what's delivering that DNS answer. Give me a record type, a pool, and an FQDN. That is it. And click a button and you add it, you bolt it on, right? I think that's where, when we talk about operational efficiency and that operational ease, like, you're starting to see us really take off there. And then, just as part of the LTM side, I know that we have a lot of customers that use iRules, and iRules is absolutely coming forward with us. We've got a great experience around iRules versioning and deployment, bulk deployment, being able to go in and really manage how you operationalize iRules and give you rich editing capabilities within the product. So that's kind of what we've already got out the door, and I think that alone is really compelling. But we're right on the cusp of launching Big IP Next Access, which will be the transition over from our Access Policy Manager product. We are trying to simplify the naming as we go through here. F5 has always been a very acronym-heavy company. I'm doing my best to say, hey, what does the thing do? Well, it manages access. Okay, let's call it Access. Right? So Access is on the cusp. In fact, that release will be coming out next week. And along with that, our initial release of our SSL Orchestrator product for SSL inspection, both inbound and outbound use cases. Right now, we have a lot of the outbound use cases covered off, and we're adding to this all the time. So within the next week, we're going to have 5 of our 6 major modules out the door. And then for each of those modules, right, the use cases continue to grow. So whenever we put something out, guys, Big IP is a 25-year-old rock solid platform, right? I can't get all the features in within the amount of time that we've had, but everything that we know that customers are using, and we do a lot of work to understand what customers are using, we're going to go get that enabled in the product. And I think right now we're hitting a really nice sweet spot of, like, most of the things that you're running are probably supported. And by the way, that migration tool that I told you will tell you if everything's available in Next or not. It will tell you, hey, maybe you're using a feature that isn't there yet. And the great part about that is when you do that, it also gives us the data to understand what's not in the product so we can prioritize that and get that done. We also then have our AFM, or our firewall enterprise use cases for layer 4 ACL and DDoS that are coming in the summer. And then, like I said, every release gets new use cases, gets depth into the complexity of kind of profiles and things like that. The last thing I'll mention, because roadmap is always fun in this space, because we kind of fall back on our heritage in terms of the network space, and in the network space things were very static. But Big IP Next is a software project that releases software of production quality, of GA quality, every 6 weeks. So if the thing that you're running is not on the roadmap, that's fine. That doesn't mean we don't know about it. It just means that we got to go look and say, hey, how can we get that enabled? When we bring something into the roadmap, we're very thoughtful about it and say, how do we make sure we stick to the tenets of the platform with that operational experience and that user and customer experience that we're trying to drive, and get that into a release? And we release every 6 weeks. So we have a lot of customers that have given me a feature request, and they've gotten that feature in 6 weeks, or sometimes even less, because in Big IP Next, you can patch your instance and we can deliver features as they're done to you. And that's an extra flexibility in the platform.
No, thanks for sharing that. I mean, David, I know you even have, a very long history with F5, supporting it in numerous capacities. Talking to customers today, being an architect in the past, with that interface. And I mean, what are your thoughts on kind of the modern roadmap for where they are today versus where they're going? Like, do you feel that's meeting customer demand, and, across that from a point of innovation as well as an integration, and kind of molding over into the DevOps more method of supporting a line of business through DevSecOps, versus it being a technology, problem solver? It's more of a business problem solver. What are your thoughts?
No, I totally agree with that. I love the method that F5 is using, bringing this forward, and trying to meet the customers and where they are actually. That I've like you said, I have a long history with F5. There is plenty in Big IP I never want to see in Big IP Next. Right? We've seen a lot of accretions, things that were important back in 2004 that are no longer important today. So I think the methodology that they have is fantastic. I think it's meeting customers exactly where they are. I think it'll be ahead of where they are before too long, if it isn't already ahead of where they are. And I love to see how they're doing their release cycle. This is a much more modern, up-to-date way of doing release cycle. The one thing that and I don't even think it's quite out yet, but I know is coming, and that is like how the software is going to be licensed different from the way that it's licensed currently. Gives a level of flexibility to customers who are currently on hardware, but know that at some point they're moving and shifting up, be it to cloud, be it to CNF, wherever they're going. That flexibility is huge, right? Being able to understand, okay, not only can I, for the first time ever, be able to move my software from hardware to another platform with ease, but now I also have a certain level of almost sizing built in, right? I'm moving 24 vCPUs, right? And I'm moving it from this Big IP hardware that we've decommissioned, and we're moving this project up to the cloud. Okay, I know now I can shift that up there, and I know exactly how big that is. So I think that brings a lot of clarity to how Big IP Next can be consumed. It's more of a, hey, how much horsepower do I need? Which is, in all reality, a lot of how we would design or let's say come up with a customer's bill of material is, how much horsepower do you need to do it? Hitesh alluded to it earlier. Customers aren't coming to me going, you know what? My Big IP Viprions, I keep tipping them over with so much traffic. But what they do tell me and are constantly designing for is, okay, I have this big application or these big applications on my big IPs, and I need to add WAF to them for compliance. I need to add them for security. How do I handle this, right? How do I scope for this? So this, I think, is huge, and a great change. And then, if I can use this point to try to drive something home, if we can tie this in with distributed cloud console at some point, I will also be very happy. So, there's my little hope wish while we got Hitesh on the hot seat here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, I think you bring up a very, very good point around the flexibility and agility in the licensing, right? What that did for like F5's flex consumption program, what that did for customers to bring flexibility and agility to have the software portability. But now if you can invest in hardware and are looking to move to cloud in the next 36, 60 months, whatever it might be, to be able to have that portability to move that license around, that is invaluable. I'm not aware of really any other manufacturers in technology offering that today. So kind of bringing me to the next question that I got as we kind of, are coming close to time. I wanted to give each of you the opportunity to shed light on what you think IT leaders should be prioritizing in context of this conversation we've had today, whether it's application delivery, it's security, or even adjacent areas that they should be focusing on as leaders. So Hitesh, I'll hand it to you first and gather your thoughts, and we'll close up with David.
Yeah, sure. So look, I think that there's a couple of things that is more cemented in me, and I guess like maybe I'm getting to be an old stodgy dude now after 20 years in this space. But here's what I know: we F5 occupies this space that I like to call the messy middle. It is the messy middle of layer 4 through 7. Your customers and your users are layer 8. And we definitely have a part to play in layer 1 through 3, but we're not necessarily like providing your net core networking and switching and things like that. But that messy middle, layer 4 through 7, ADC and security, is here to stay. Despite everything that I've heard and everything that we've seen over the last 6 years, not only is that problem here, but it keeps getting bigger. It keeps getting harder to address. And we had our customer conference here, App World, a couple weeks ago in San Jose, and I kind of had a little talk track on this there. And what I know is the problem is getting bigger. The number of people that we have in the known universe to solve these problems is actually finite and not growing. If anything, it's shrinking because AI is stealing all my talent in this space. Okay. I know that it takes me on average, and I think our customers and even you at WWT can empathize with this. It takes us 2 years to get someone up to speed and an expert in this area to really go solve the business challenges with the technology, right? To translate that business problem into a technology solve with the platform. Those macro things are there. They are not going away. I don't see any reason why they would go away in the next year. Not to say that we can't chip away at those problems, but there isn't going to be an order of magnitude change there. So how do we go solve for that? The way we're solving for that is going in and, like I said, being very thoughtful, being very specific in the fact that the operational experience and removing that burden from our end customers matters. That it is something that we must invest time and effort in, that we must innovate in, because the bottom line is you're getting more environments, you're getting more apps, you have the same or less number of people, and your problems are growing. That's the landscape I see. And when I talk to practitioners all the way up to the C-suite, this is what I hear over and over again. So for us and for me, very personally, kind of leading the product and doing this every day, this is what's in my mind. And this is what my team is focused on, is how are we making our lives easier? Because those other macro things, we have very limited tools to solve those. But I have the biggest sledgehammer in the room to say, but I got a product that can solve these problems for you. Upgrades are a 7-click process. Fully automated cluster-based upgrade in 20 minutes with 7 clicks. That's 120 separate TMSH commands in classic Big IP. That is a massive savings. I mentioned the DNS case, 5 clicks to add GSLB to any application. That is a massive savings, right? We're not taking away, by the way, the power of the platform. You have access to all your knobs. I'm not going to take away your knobs, because that's what the power of Big IP is we use those knobs to solve real business problems out there in the world. But there's a way to do this that gets us more throughput through the people and through the technology that we have. And that's the throughput. If there's a data plane throughput I'm worried about, it's layer 8 throughput. And I got to solve that problem, and we're going to do it in Big IP next.
That's fantastic, Hitesh. David, I kind of wish I would have went with you first, because that's a hard act to follow. I think you just went across the landscape of, Big IP, F5, and an industry really focusing on people, process, and technology. Right. And as you said, I totally agree with you, is that a lot of times it's the layer 8 complexities. How do we remove the inefficiencies there, get people back to doing what they love to do, and utilize the technology in a manner that scales business, that scales people via automation. So David, open to hearing your thoughts there on kind of where you think leaders should be looking, moving forward and prioritizing.
Yeah. So, what Hitesh said is 100% true, but what I'll say that is a little bit different, and to give props to F5 on this, is they're making a lot of big bets in adjacent marketplaces to where core big IP is, that takes them and makes them more than an ADC company. Right. So what I'm referencing is their investments and whatnot in distributed cloud, of course, another way in which one can consume the services that they need from F5, depending upon how they best want to do it. Their acquisitions of HeyHack and Wib. Right now, we're talking API security. Well, this is huge for them, right? And Big IP Next is 100% a part of that solution chain of how do I secure my APIs, right? The WAF portion of Big IP Next is 100% going to be there as part of that protection chain for customers, not only applications, but their APIs. And oh, by the way, you can't really have full AI security without API security. And that's another reason why F5 is even more relevant today than they were 10 years ago. And they were the leader and most relevant player in the space at that time. So I think when you couple what they've been doing as of late, the trajectory they're heading, and you couple all that with their API first and automation first, I think they're going exactly where customers need to go, and solving for the layer 8 problem is something that right now in this space, the only player that does that is F5. And I'm happy to put my name to that. Like, nobody else in this space right now is doing that, and doing it in such a thoughtful and methodical way.
No, thanks for sharing that. I think, as we wrap up here, this episode of Partner Spotlight brought to you by WWT Presents. Definitely want to thank you guys again, Hitesh, David, taking time out of your busy schedules to have this very important discussion and really provide this thought leadership and where F5 is going, where the market's going, and so on. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to WWT.com to view this. If you'd like to learn more about WWT and the F5 partnership, please, visit the partner section of WWT.com website. We have lots of great resources surrounding F5 products and services out there, and even a few additional F5 focused partner spotlights that surely complement this conversation. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions moving forward, and just thanks again, and we'll see you next time.